Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Debi LaPlante. I'm the director of the Division on Addiction at Cambridge Health Alliance, a Harvard Medical School teaching hospital. I'm here joined today with Dr. Heather Gray, Mr. Ed Talbot, and Ms. Maura McCann. We're here to talk about four things today. First, the New Hampshire gambling landscape. Second, the history and future of the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling. Third, stakeholder approaches to minimizing gambling harm. And fourth, the future of problem gambling capacity efforts in New Hampshire. Mr. Ed Talbot is a director of the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling and a commissioner of the New Hampshire Council on Responsible Gambling. Ms. Maura McCann is the director of marketing at the New Hampshire Lottery and chair of the New Hampshire Council on Responsible Gambling. I'll get started with a few questions for Ms. McCann. First, can you tell us in what ways New Hampshire residents legally can gamble?
Sure. So here in New Hampshire, anybody age 18 or over can participate in gambling. We have a robust line of products through the New Hampshire Lottery. Sports betting is also available. And then we have 16 charitable casinos here in New Hampshire.
Thanks, Maura. Can you tell me a little bit about what the state knows about how many people gamble? Does the state estimate how many people gamble each year and how many people gamble regularly, not just one or two times each year?
Sure. So we know here in New Hampshire, the population, of course, is, a little more than 1.3 million people. And the adults number about 1 million or so, just perhaps slightly less. Gambling, for the most part, however, is anonymous. So somebody who goes into a store, purchases a ticket, goes into one of our 3 retail sports books that we have to place a sports betting wager, as well as going into the charitable casinos. When they all participate in that, they remain anonymous. It's really not until they actually come in and claim a large prize here at Lottery headquarters that we become more familiar with them. So frequently throughout the year, we do some surveys. We do ask, how much do you participate? Is it on a weekly basis, a monthly basis? But we really don't, aside from that, it's still pretty anonymous. So we don't have a number specific to that.
Okay, thanks, Maura. Can you explain a little bit about how the gambling landscape has changed in New Hampshire over the last few years?
Sure. So New Hampshire is actually the first legal lottery in the United States. We started it all back in 1964. So obviously, throughout the 58 years that we've been in business, that landscape has changed. It's changed from offering, we actually began in the 60s with a $3 lottery ticket. And when you think about, what $3 was back in the 60s, that was a lot of money to participate. And through the years, the products have changed. The products have, obviously been increased by price point. Really, in the past 5 years, we have seen really exponential expansion of gaming here in New Hampshire. Between our lottery products that we offer, certainly Keno became one of our products. Online gaming called New Hampshire iLottery also came into existence. And most recently, as I've mentioned, sports betting. So certainly we saw expansion throughout the years, but just again, in the past 5 years, we've probably seen the most expansion.
Thanks. That sounds like a lot of change in a short amount of time. Do you expect to see any new gambling opportunities for New Hampshire residents in the coming years?
Sure. So, we work with a lot of businesses that bring to us their ideas. And really, it's more ideas that enhance the existing products that we have. So I do know that there are other items out there. iGaming is another one. iGaming being, types of casino games to allow people to play online. But again, for the most part, it's really at this point enhancing what we currently have.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Heather Gray to talk a little bit about stakeholder approaches to minimizing gambling harm.
Great, thank you. And I have some questions for Mr. Ed Talbot. So, Ed, could you start by telling us where the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling started and where do you see it going?
Thank you, Dr. Gray. New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling actually was incorporated in 1996, and it was run from 1996 and 2010 by the Vermont Council on New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling. In 2010, the National Council suggested that all states be independent and have an independent council. And so there was a separation from Vermont. A group of us volunteers got together, tried to resurrect things. The first obstacle we ran into was the council had lost its nonprofit status as a result of not filing an annual report with IRS. We spent a year and a half getting that resurrected, and in 2014 we received our 501c3 authorization. In 2015, we began providing services such as the helpline, had an office, small office, and we existed for several years thanks to, in large part, to the contributions of the New Hampshire Lottery. And Director McIntyre always said that people who provide legalized gambling have a social obligation to address the negative sides of gambling. And he backed those words up with action. We received donations from the New Hampshire Lottery, as well as in-kind services that helped us tremendously to get the word out about problem gambling and how there is help and hope for those. After that, we were also able to get a small grant. We participated in charitable gaming 3 different years, and that has allowed us to stay in existence. Fortunately, 2 years ago, we were awarded a contract when the state finally authorized money to address problem gambling. And we were authorized this contract for $100,000 a year for 3 years. And as Maura pointed out, New Hampshire was the first state in the nation to offer a lottery or a sweepstakes. And in 2019, it became the first state to authorize funding for problem gambling. And then that was backed up with this contract. So it was one of the 13 states that was not providing up until that point.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that history. What does the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling hope to accomplish within the state?
The New Hampshire Council always has as a mission, or its motto is to become the resource in the state of New Hampshire for those with a problem or information regarding problem gambling. We continue to provide the helpline, but we also offer education, information, intervention, advocacy, and referrals to treatment for problem gambling. A lot of the times we get questions either through the helpline or from the community itself, not from the gambler, but from the loved ones around the gambler, trying to identify a problem. And we feel, having lived that problem, we have the expertise to respond to those calls. We also like to provide services around the state when, for example, there's discussions on expanded gambling that make sure that responsible gambling or problem gambling is addressed in those discussions because it's necessary to have those services. We hope to pair with New Hampshire 211. So there's always somebody to respond to it. We're on their service board right now, but as far as them taking over the phones in the evening and that, they haven't been able to do that. But we also try to expand the network of gambling services in New Hampshire.
Thank you. So if you could take a step back for a minute and think about how New Hampshire compares to other states. So if you think about what New Hampshire has a capacity for in terms of problem gambling, prevention services, and treatment, how does that compare to other states in your view?
Really, in most comparisons, we're way in the back. For example, pre-pandemic, the state of Massachusetts, which I know the population is larger, but they had 49 active Gamblers Anonymous meetings. At the start of the pandemic, New Hampshire had 2. It's now been reduced to 1. There's 1 in-person meeting. There's a second meeting that has been held virtually via Zoom out of Manchester. And I received some wonderful news last night that as of March 29th, they're going to go to a hybrid model where they will offer both in-person and virtual options. I know on last night's meeting, 8 or 9 of the people said that they would be there in person, and then most of the others said positively they would continue the virtual. So that's a big step. There's never been a lot of training regarding problem gambling, and if a problem gambler, 76% of problem gamblers have an alcohol or a drug problem. So if you're treating a problem with a person with a substance use disorder, and there's an underlying issue of a gambling addiction, you're not really addressing the full recovery, and it's almost an option to relapse easily. So we want to take away that. Those are the services that we feel are critical. So the educational component is very, very important. We feel screening should be done across the state, not just in cases where people are in treatment. But my professional career involved corrections. And if we did anything at all in an intake interview, we might say, do you have a problem with gambling? Well, obviously, 99% of the time, a person's going to say no. But there was never a screening tool that we could use to really identify that problem and then assess that person further for the extent of the problem. So those are the things we're trying to bring to the state to bring it up to speed with other councils.
Thank you. And you've already touched on some of these, but what do you see as the biggest needs for the state of New Hampshire in terms of preventing and treating problem gambling?
First, the first and foremost has to be community awareness, making the general public aware. In fact, I was listening to somebody yesterday really bemoaning the fact that she had relapsed and gone back and a couple of weeks and had a real tough session. And the support in that meeting for that person would not be present out in the community. I mean, people, my own family said to me, why don't you just stop? Why don't you quit? Can't you see what you're doing? Those things don't work. But when you start working with other people who experience the same thing, you get the tools that you need to overcome those urges. So that's a big, important piece of that, that tool has to be used. We also have a limited resources as far as the northern half of the state. I walked into the prison in Berlin, and when I talked about problem gambling, I was asked, is this for the staff or for the inmates? Because they both would be, involved. So we know the problem is out there. I know the statistics when the New Hampshire was doing a study on possibly citing a casino. The statistics were that there were probably 65,000 problem gamblers in the state and 8,000 of them being pathological or compulsive gamblers. Well, if you've got, about 20 people in a state identifying that they do have a problem, then there's a real need to get out there and screen and address the others. And I think part of the training piece that we want to impress on clinicians that this problem is there. And I think their feelings may be, I don't want to expose that because I don't know how to treat that. And really, they have the expertise if they're dealing with another addiction. There are loads of similarities, but there are also some minor differences. And that little bit of training would complement what they're doing presently.
Thank you. Okay, back over to you, Dr. LaPlante.
Thank you, Dr. Gray and Mr. Talbot. It certainly was interesting to hear about New Hampshire's needs for problem gambling prevention and treatment. A closely related concept is responsible gambling. Ms. McCann, can you tell us a little bit about how the New Hampshire Lottery supports responsible gambling?
Sure. It's an interesting point. The lottery's in kind of a juxtaposition where our mission daily is to maximize revenue, obviously maximize sales in order to turn over the most amount of net profit, because our net profit is earmarked for public education and supporting public education here in New Hampshire. Yet, we also have the product that is actually, affecting people here in New Hampshire. So it's really a little bit of, it's balancing both. It's, obviously working towards that maximization of revenue, but it's also understanding that we are also the vehicle that can help get information out to people if they need assistance or if a family member needs assistance. So, working with the councils is wonderful because, again, we are the vehicle. We are the vehicle that can get information out to point people in the direction to find help, either with our websites or with, some printed documentation at the stores that sell our tickets, at the casinos where people certainly enjoy a night or, some time of entertainment by walking into a casino. All of those are touch points. They're touch points where our players participate. So therefore, that information should also be present in those locations.
Thank you, for sure. Looking ahead to some of the new legal gambling opportunities that you talked about a moment ago, how can we balance these new opportunities and the revenue that they'll provide against the need to protect public health?
Yeah, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the kind of the gambling landscape has within the past 5 years really expanded. So what I feel that we can do is to, work with those locations, work with the retail sports book locations, work with those charitable casinos, as well as, we have over 1,200 locations in the state that sell lottery tickets. So really, they are our partners in business, but they should also be our partners in promoting responsible gambling. So again, from a retail perspective, the stores, we can provide information there. We often put information on the bottom of tickets that people actually purchase, like a Powerball ticket. They may see, and the 1-800 number to call nationally for help, or the local telephone number that we all know that Ed picks up and, provides great help to people. But again, also in the larger locations, the sports book, the casinos, we need to get information there posted. The posters need to go up, printed materials need to be, provided. And again, it's all about partnership in the end.
Great, thank you. Does the state have any special concerns about barriers that might make promoting responsible gambling difficult in New Hampshire?
No is the answer, because we recognize that we have that social responsibility. It's really just balancing the two, again, maximizing the revenue, making sure that people are enjoying the lottery, enjoying the products that we do provide, but doing it responsibly. But it's also balancing it with the fact that we know that there are people here in New Hampshire that need help. So again, it's all about, balancing both directions at the same time.
A lot of different organizations and people are responsible for responsible gambling. How do you think different stakeholders, New Hampshire Lottery, gambling operators, treatment providers, individual gamblers, how can they work together to minimize the harm from gambling?
Yeah, and it's really kind of going back to that other, the prior question about the fact that we need to recognize this partnership. I feel that if we provide the information, that these partners will also in turn provide the information to their customers. So I really think that, as we kind of move along here and we recognize the fact that, as Ed has mentioned before, we need to expand, the ability to provide information to people about responsible gambling. So all of the entities, be it the retail sports book or even our mobile app for sports betting, DraftKings has a very robust responsible gambling program. So again, it's all about the various entities working together. It's about the lottery providing that information, as we are the vehicle that really works with these individuals, works with the stores, works with the casinos. So really, between the councils, the lottery, and the people that provide this type of entertainment here in New Hampshire, it's all about us working together to, provide the best that we can.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCann. I'll turn it over now to Dr. Gray again to talk about the future of problem gambling capacity building efforts in New Hampshire.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Talbot, certainly the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling is one of those stakeholders who can work with other stakeholders to minimize gambling harm. What do you see as the 5-year strategic goals for the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling, especially in terms of building capacity in New Hampshire?
Thank you. The council's mission to be the resource has prioritized a comprehensive plan that would educate the community regarding problem gambling and cause a greater awareness of the behavior itself. An expansion of these services would also include additional self-help meetings, more than what we have now for sure, more informational sessions such as webinars, training sessions for critical populations like criminal justice, adolescents, seniors, people with substance abuse disorders. They should definitely be addressed, as well as training sessions for clinicians. As I said previously, I think the lack of clinicians trained in this also prevents them from trying to identify it and opening a door that they would have to address. So if we can get out there and get this training, the expansion of our helpline in partnership with New Hampshire 211 is certainly critical, and that would help. But there's new state-sponsored programs that have existed that we've made some inroads with. Doorways program, rapid response for mental health, because I'm sure, as you know from your studies, the suicide rates with problem gamblers is higher than any other addiction, and that definitely needs to be addressed. Also, in this day and age, we need to be more socially aware of social media and how to get the information out, utilizing those tools. And especially prioritizing things now like video gaming, the addiction rate, and, are we going to train a generation into becoming compulsive gamblers by video gaming? All these things, I think, are going to be needed to be addressed in the future and really in the near future.
Thank you. And speaking of the future, if gambling opportunities continue to expand in New Hampshire, so for instance, with mobile casino gaming, are there other things that you think will be important moving forward?
I think, especially with the technology today, this isn't like going up to the racetrack window and putting your $2 down and making a win bet. You can take out your smartphone now and be betting on one of the final 4 games, or playing a game on there for money and losing money. So it's a much simpler form of gambling. It can be very much hidden a lot easier. I was around recovery for probably 10 years before I saw a woman in a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and now many meetings I go to, it's 50-50. And I think Number one is gambling is much more socially acceptable than it was previously. And it's also more available and more encouraged. So women are gambling, getting into trouble with it, and seeking recovery. So we've got to be able to do that too. I think there are multiple approaches. The pandemic slowed down a lot of the things, but it also brought out a very interesting thing where people would go to a Zoom meeting because they could turn the camera off, hide their identity. They didn't have to speak if they didn't want, but they would get a feel of what a recovery meeting is like and see that there is hope. So I think we've got to adjust with that technology as well.
I agree. So you mentioned earlier about the need for more training for New Hampshire clinicians when it comes to gambling. Are there any educational or training opportunities available now at either the national, regional, or state level?
Yes, probably the national one is the International Gambling Counselors Certification Board, ICCBG, igccb.org. They have several levels of training to certify you. The National Council also partners with the IGCCB to provide their training too on a national level. There's maybe 100 clinicians listed that have received this certification. There isn't one from the state of New Hampshire. So there's definitely a need there. Then I know different states have certifications. And again, all the time I'm saying certification. There isn't a licensing thing. This is strictly a certification to say that, okay, you're certified, you're taking courses to address it. But Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Oklahoma, Oregon, Ohio, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Florida, Wisconsin, Indiana, West Virginia, and Rhode Island have state programs to train problem gamblers. New Hampshire does not. We're seeking to get that going. We have started on something, have the first installment done on a program for peer recovery support workers to be trained who can provide services under Medicaid, and we don't have to worry about being funded by an insurance company.
Thank you. And our last question of the day, how can people help the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling further its mission in their own work? In other words, what changes would you like to see in the state of New Hampshire?
Well, obviously, the first and foremost has to be financial support. The contract we're operating under originally was set for $250,000 a year through legislation, and that's probably more realistic than $100,000 now, but it's a lot better than what we had before, so we're willing to take the steps. But that's one of the big needs. And also, the funding needs to be diversified. We've been very fortunate in New Hampshire to have tremendous support from the gaming industry itself. I have not made a call to a gambling establishment regarding a person with a problem that I haven't got a rapid response from. The New Hampshire Lottery has done the same thing. They had training sessions for people, their supervisors, to recognize problem gambling. If we have issues regarding a person wanting to self-exclude, they're there to assist us. I really think what you need to look at is what's the population in New Hampshire? What's the percentage of people that are problem gambling? And maybe have some of the proceeds that are being diverted for problem gambling services match those kind of statistics. And the other one that I would really recommend, and this kind of parallels what Massachusetts has done, is either create an office of problem gambling services or problem gambling services offer in the state government, that all those services can be coordinated underneath. It centralizes everything and makes it a lot easier to work. But I can't say enough for the participation of the people that we've met in New Hampshire and the encouragement and support we've got.
Thank you. So that concludes our interview for today. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Ed Talbot, also Ms. Maura McCann, and Dr. Debi LaPlante for participating today. If viewers have any questions on any of the topics we covered, they can reach out to the New Hampshire Council on Problem Gambling or the New Hampshire Council for Responsible Gambling. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.